The sun was warm as I pulled into the driveway of my new home. Boxes stacked high in the back seat, a fresh start finally within reach. The neighborhood was quiet, the streets lined with identical houses that gleamed under the afternoon light. It seemed perfect. I stepped out, stretching my legs and taking in the well-manicured lawns and pristine sidewalks. Everything smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. But beneath the surface, something felt off. The welcome packet sat on the kitchen counter, thick, detailed, and full of rules. The Homeowners Association Handbook was one of them. A 120-page document that outlined every imaginable guideline from the height of hedges to the acceptable colors for mailbox flags. I skimmed through it, amused at the rigidity. Most of it made sense. Keep the neighborhood tidy, protect property values. But some rules were strange, like the clause about no outdoor furniture visible from the street after 8 p.m. or the ban on certain bird feeders. That first week I met Corinne Whitmore. She was the HOA president, or at least that's what she told me when she showed up unannounced at my door. Her sharp eyes scanned my front yard like a drill sergeant inspecting recruits. "Have you read the new amendments?" she asked, holding a thick binder. I nodded, trying to appear cooperative. Yes, I skimmed them. Corinne smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Good, because compliance isn't optional. Days later, the first notice appeared. A letter slipped under my door citing a violation. My mailbox flag was the wrong color. The penalty was $50. I corrected it immediately, but the notices kept coming. Trash cans left out, too long, lawn edges not neat enough, my driveway cluttered. Each fine added up, a constant drip of frustration. At the next HOA meeting, I raised concerns. Corinne dismissed me with a wave. "Rules are rules," she said coldly. "They keep us all safe and our property values high." But the board members seemed uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact. I began to notice whispered conversations when I entered rooms, glances that stopped when I approached. Something was wrong. I started paying attention to the HOA's financial reports, publicly available, but dense and confusing. Oddities appeared, inflated fees, payments to unknown contractors, expenses that didn't add up. My gut told me to dig deeper. One late night, I sifted through old board meeting minutes, noticing votes that never happened, signatures that looked suspicious. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became. This wasn't just strict, it was corrupt. The intimidation, the fines, the secrecy, all tools to keep homeowners in line while a few were lining their pockets. I knew I had to act. But first I needed proof. I started attending every HOA meeting I could, blending in among wary neighbors and stiff board members. The meetings were formal, dull on the surface, but I sensed undercurrents of tension beneath polite nods and scripted speeches. Corinne dominated the room, her voice sharp and commanding. She dismissed questions with practiced ease, redirecting conversations before they could get too close to uncomfortable topics. At one meeting, I asked about a recent large expenditure labeled simply as community improvements. Corinne deflected with vague answers about landscaping and repairs but avoided specifics. Afterward, I stayed late, waiting for board members to leave. I cornered one, a middle-aged woman named Linda, who looked exhausted and uneasy. "I've seen the reports," I said softly. "Some of the numbers don't add up. Are you sure everything is above board?" Linda hesitated, then whispered, "Corinne controls everything. If you cross her, you're out. The others are too scared to speak." That night, my inbox flooded with anonymous tips from neighbors who feared retaliation but wanted to help. Stories of unfair fines, threats, and hush money surfaced. I realized I wasn't alone. To gather more concrete evidence, I obtained public records on the HOA's finances. I cross-referenced contractors and service providers, uncovering links to companies registered under names connected to Corinne and a few other board members. The pieces fit together: inflated contracts, fake invoices, money disappearing into private accounts. As I compiled this, my own harassment worsened. Notices appeared on my door accusing me of violations I never committed. Corinne accused me of disrupting the harmony of the neighborhood during a tense phone call. but I was determined. The community deserved the truth. The deeper I dug, the more tangled the web became. Every document led to another secret. Every conversation revealed layers of deception. I hired a private investigator to help trace the financial trails I couldn't follow on my own. Weeks of surveillance and digging uncovered meetings in secluded places, off-the-books deals, and forged signatures on official HOA paperwork. One evening, the investigator called with news that shocked me. They had found evidence of a shell company owned by Karen and her closest allies, a company that was the actual owner of several HOA assets, including the office building and maintenance equipment. This meant they were not just mismanaging funds, but profiting directly from the community's dues. I met with a small group of trusted neighbors sharing what I had uncovered. Faces I'd only nodded to in passing now looked at me with a mixture of fear and hope. Together we planned a way to expose the corruption, but Karen wasn't blind. She sensed the threat and increased her pressure. Fines became daily. Complaints were filed against me for minor infractions. A confrontational letter arrived, accusing me of harassment and disrupting community peace. Karen even tried to have me banned from HOA meetings. But the community was starting to stand behind me. More homeowners spoke up, sharing their stories and lending their voices to the cause. The tipping point came during a tense HOA board meeting when I presented hard evidence of the shell company's ownership and the forged documents. Karen's mask slipped. The room erupted in chaos. Board members who had been silent now demanded answers. The moment I laid the evidence on the table, everything changed. The tension in the room thickened like a storm about to break. Karen's face twisted from anger to panic. Her voice rose, trying to drown out the murmurs and accusations. But the board members, once cowed, found their courage. Questions flew fast. Demands for explanations filled the air. Local reporters, tipped off by neighbors, showed up, cameras ready. The story was no longer ours alone, it was public. Authorities began investigations. Subpoenas were issued. Karen and several board members faced legal scrutiny. The community rallied. Meetings became packed with residents demanding transparency and reform. Slowly, the corrupt leadership crumbled. Karen resigned, her empire dismantled piece by piece. With the new board elected, trust began to heal. Old rules were restored, new safeguards put in place. As I stood in my restored yard, now free from harassment, I felt the weight of victory. This was more than a personal battle. It was a fight for justice, for community, and for the right to call a place home. The investigations brought more than just legal scrutiny. They exposed a deep rot that had festered under the HOA's polished exterior. Bank records, emails, and secret contracts surfaced, revealing how Karen and her cronies had siphoned funds meant for community upkeep into private accounts. Neighborhood playgrounds lay neglected, sidewalks cracked and unsafe, all while HOA fees skyrocketed. The irony was bitter. Homeowners paid more, received less, and suffered under fear and intimidation. As news of the scandal spread, the community's outrage swelled. What had once been whispered grievances became public cries for change. I found myself at the forefront of a movement, not by choice, but because no one else was willing to stand. The new board elections were heated and emotional. Candidates who had remained silent now stepped forward, pledging transparency and fairness. I supported those committed to rebuilding trust. In the weeks following the leadership change, the neighborhood began healing. Violations stopped targeting innocent homeowners. Fines were rescinded. Gardens bloomed where once there had been fear. One afternoon, as I watered my native plants, the same ones Karen had tried to ban, an elderly neighbor approached me. "Thank you," she said softly. "You gave us our neighborhood back." Her words warmed me more than I expected. Justice had been served, but the real victory was restoring a sense of community where homeowners were heard, respected, and free.